Hello, welcome back to the channel 12-Step Guide with Troyo. I say welcome back this time because if you didn't get a chance to review the previous videos on step 4, you'll miss a lot. So today we are doing an Alcoholics Anonymous step 4, column 4, resentment list, primarily out of the big book with supporting information out of the 12 and 12. Now, this education is good for any 12-step program, as all 12-step programs are based on the original version. And I will seek to touch on other programs as I educate. I'm mindful and sensitive to that. So, what are we looking to achieve in step 4? We're looking to identify our character defects or drivers that drove our step 1. That drove our alcoholism, drove our anger, drove our codependency, sex issues gone wild, financial issues, gambling, on and on. So, step 4 is a deep uh, search into those drivers. So, step 4, column 4, is also the great bait and switch. It's brilliant as far as I'm concerned. What Bill put together when you see it and understand it, and there's also a very important thing happening today that if you miss it, you would miss a tremendous amount of the transition about how this works. So I'm going to recap some information real quick for us, and it's going to start at Bill's story. Now, in Bill's story, he's in treatment when he did his first soft step 4. So he's maybe 10 days sober with his sponsor, EBT. So they're doing a resentment list. They're doing an inventory, an Oxford Group inventory. They're not doing Alcoholics Anonymous inventory. And his sponsor is 2.5 to 3 months sober, mind you. So they're in the hospital, and Bill describes it exactly like this. We made a list of people I had hurt or to whom I felt resentment. Now, in the original book I'm teaching, that's page 23. In the newer version, it could be page 13. So let's come back to that. Made a list of people I had hurt. That's step 8. Or to whom I felt resentment. That's step 4. So in this Oxford Group list, he's listing step 8 before step 4. And well, why is that? So what is step 4? If you're in a meeting and it's up on the wall, the 12 steps are listed. So step 4 made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So what's step 8? Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. So why is he listing step 8 before step 4? Well, how about we go and look at step 8 in the big book for a minute and find a sentence early on that I think is exceptionally important. Otherwise, and if you're not doing a big book 4th step, if you're, say, trying to do a 4th step from the step book, the 12 and 12, for example, that come out 13 years later, you'll totally miss this. It's going to be page, in the old book, the original book, page 88. Maybe it's page 76 in a newer version. Let's look at steps 8 and 9. We have a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. We made it when we took inventory. We subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. So we took inventory in step 4. So the first thing you encounter when you get to step 8 in the big book is it tells you you already have a list. So how is that possible? When does that happen? Well, I'm here to tell you that happens right here, right now. This is where it begins. It's going to begin with an attitude adjustment. And I called it the great bait and switch. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start reading. I'm not going to recap because there was too much covered in the previous three teachings, to where I encourage you to go back, because you're just going to miss more and more if you don't, one column at a time. That there's a lot going on here. So we're going to start at page 79 in the original book. I have the original, but it's could be page 66, somewhere around there in the newer versions. So here's the attitude adjustment to column 4. So just to recap, we've made a list of resentments, who, and then why, and then we did our column 3, and we did these top to bottom. So now we're on column 4. We turn back to the list, for it held the key to the future. We were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. Because up to this point, it's easy for an alcoholic to list who he's pissed off at. And I would assume other programs also. We began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. In that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, had power to actually kill. How could we escape? We saw that these resentments must be mastered. But how? We could not wish them away any more than alcohol. And you would replace, if you're in a different program, the word alcohol with what you might be struggling with. You might make a few adjustments. Maybe everything doesn't fit perfect because you're not the alcoholic. This was our course. We realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick, though we did not like their symptoms and the way these disturbed us. They, like ourselves, were sick too. We asked God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, "This is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done." We avoid retaliation or argument. We wouldn't treat sick people that way. If we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful. We cannot be helpful to all people, but at least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. Now, before I continue on, I want to show you my list. I've got a list here, and it's 4 columns, and then now we're on this column 4, and I want to enter some information before we read it so that when we see it, you understand where it came from. So what we're going to do is, here's some information here. Selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, fear, blame, enable. And I've got next to them selfish, SH, dishonesty, D, self-seeking, SS, fear, F, blame, B, enable, EN, because we're just trapping basic information here as the other columns to convey later. But there's a question he's going to pose, and we're going to review that a little bit more, but I wanted to just understand what's going on there before we continue. So, referring to our list. Now pay attention here. This is important about what just happened in step 8. Putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done. We resolutely looked for our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, or frightened? Now you'll notice that blame and enable aren't listed there. We'll get to that. Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Where were we to blame? So there's the word blame. The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly and were willing to set these matters straight. Now that's step 8. You're beginning, what part did I play? You're beginning an 8-step list is what's being asked you. Now, I had told you in the last video, in parentheses in the list, and we'll get to it soon, you've seen fear, and that was column 4. Notice that the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and the wife. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. But did not we ourselves set the ball rolling? Sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. So that's the basic directions for step 4, column 4, resentment list. And what I want to do is I want to now come back to the list. Again, I'll show you the list that Bill made as part of the list. Depending on your book, it might all be on one page. So, and there's another thing I need to do also before we get started. We talked about drivers, and we had made a list of some extra words in column 3. And where did those extra words come from? As with blame, the word blame showed up in the big book, but it also showed up in the 12 and 12. So we're going to cover some definition about that. But before we go to column 4, I need to add some words to column 3. And we'll ask a question very simply, how were we affected by column 3? And so basically we're going to add guilt. Emotionally troubled by feeling at fault. So were you affected by guilt in column 3? Self-loathing. Strong feelings of hatred or dislike for oneself. Did you have those types of feelings? Is there anywhere in your column 3 that you can find that you were affected emotionally in that way by your resentments? How about exhibitionism? There's a word rolls off your tongue. Basically, it's without modesty. Excessively attract attention onto oneself. How about assets? And so what's going on with that? Assets, positive attributes coupled with liabilities. Maybe it wasn't all bad. I went to work every day. That was an asset, but half the time I stopped at the bar on the way home and things like that. There's other examples, but sometimes you're not going to just try. You can understand you got assets too. And sometimes they're wrapped up. Hey, look back in 40 years ago in AA when the old timers didn't like to hear drugs. I'm a alcoholic and drug addict. Somebody would say, and they don't want to hear about that. Well, you know what is wrapped together. Those weren't assets, but nonetheless, it's an example of something wrapped together. We're going to find a lot of examples of things wrapped together in different categories. Fear is going to be wrapped with all kinds of goodies, but we have assets, and it's important to see them. It's not all bad. How about liability? Conscious or unconscious character debts is what we're going for here. There's financial liabilities, and that's covered in maybe in security, financial security. So this is character. How about self-justification? Making excuses, especially when actions conflict with belief. We kind of know something's funky, but we're doing one thing and things like that. How about humiliated? Any of that going on? Oh, I don't know about that. Well, let's say it a different way then. Ever been shamed or disgraced? Humbled, even? Mortified? If you've been any of those, things have happened. It's likely you've had an opportunity to experience humiliation. So those were all column three. Just to recap, there was others. There's a whole list. Again, if you haven't seen the last videos, you've missed a lot. So now let's get into column four. So he said selfishness. So let's define an idea. What now? Now understand here that sometimes I'm taking it right out of the book. Sometimes these definitions I am just trying to put color on so you understand a couple of things. One, what he's asking here, but two, what he's saying in the books. And when we read this 12 and 12 at the end of this, I want you to really understand what he's saying and have these points of reference to go by. So selfishness. So column for what part did we play? Were we selfish? So, and then we'll look at Bill's examples. Selfish. It pains you to have to consider the needs of others, concerned mainly for oneself or one's own advantage, pleasure, welfare, regardless of others. So, were you dishonest? Basically, lying, cheating, stealing, and misleading in any form that will affect others or us. If we spend our time at the bar instead of with our children, this is a form of dishonesty. If we kept the spouse from seeing the children or put the children between a problem relationship, this is dishonest. Putting harmful chemicals in our body and living in denial about it is dishonest. So, were you dishonest in any of your activities relating to your resentment list? If so, put a little D there. How about self-seeking? It's where we are concerned only for ourselves or are willing to hurt others in order to put our needs first. We might cheat on our taxes, lie, cheat others, steal, hurt people sexually, break promises for a better offer, put the family at risk with our addiction, treat people badly, or physically hurt others as a way of taking out our frustrations. Do we feel all people in the world are important? Or do we feel just us or the people in our little corner of the world are the important ones? Do we care if people of other races or lifestyles are hurt by our actions? Life isn't easy and it ain't perfect, and there's a whole lot of things to consider, but it might help you better understand because the way, depending on how that ball bounces, it might be difficult to assign yourself a place in the kingdom but determine everybody else is nothing. Maybe it don't translate well when it down at the bar. So just what makes you tick is all, and understanding what makes you tick, what drives you. We're striving for progress, not perfection. That's in the book. It might not a bad time to mention that. So how about fear? Fear is a tremendous one. Fear is in Bill's examples, he's got fear in all of them. So relating to resentment, helps us to fear relating to resentment, helps us to understand and realize that many things we do are motivated by fear we will go without, frightened of trying it a different way, afraid of someone in connection with resentment, fear of us not getting enough, or jealous that others will get better than us. Bill thinks it should be classed with stealing as it seems to cause much trouble. It was an evil and corroding thread which set in motion many circumstances we felt we didn't deserve. I admit it's not easy to see up front. Take the time to really try to understand and define the fear and the different ways that fear is generally, I find, it's wrapped in with all these other things. It's wrapped in with all the list in three. Much of it, you're going to find a piece of fear driving that. How about blame? Any of that going around? To find fault, to criticize, or assign responsibility. And then enable. Now that's in the step book. The word in the word is never actually used directly in the book, but it is described. And I want us to consider the word enable from two perspectives. One, were you the enabler? Codependent oftentimes could experience that. Or were you the one being enabled? And if you were the one being enabled, well, that's what happened there. So let's describe it. So uh, to require others to meet our incessant demands, or to meet someone's incessant demands. To enable, maybe it's to purchase alcohol and cigarettes for somebody. Kept me many times you purchase that from, right? Keep them in alcohol and cigarettes, or give money, believe and support the lies. Somehow you knew it was a lie, but you went along with it anyway. To make another's life easier as yours gets harder. Or how about the other side, the codependence? You know, what's that list look like? They say, "Hey, I've been in. I'm sorry. I sorry I been enabling you, and that shit's gonna stop today, right? We're gonna hold back on that just now because what happens on the other side? They're gonna resist. If they've been enabled, what are they gonna do? The enabler is going to resist you. So, did you resist the enabler? You come home drunk all the time, and then you have to keep pushing it the other way so that you can still keep things in check. Take some time to understand and define what's going on there. Um, some of these can transpose. So, what do I mean by that? Let's say you're doing your list and you're the codependent and the alcoholics both saying, okay, alcohol, they don't, they get a resentment towards alcohol. So let's say a futile effort in column 3 is for the alcoholic. It was futile to keep drinking, where for column 4, it might have been futile for the codependent to keep trying to fix them. Or this enabling, one was being enabled in one column, another might have been the enabler in another column. So the list in column 3 we're going to consider in all aspects. It depends on what the driver is here. We're not just talking alcoholics. We're talking drug addicts, but codependents, potentially an overeater. What drove that or drives it? Sex, gambling, anger. The lists go on and on. So let's go to Bill's example here. And we're going to look at column 4 now. So, Mr. Brown, his attention to my wife, it affects his sex relations and self-esteem. And then he has fear. So there's some fear there, is what he's saying. Now, told my wife of my mistress. sex relations, self-esteem, fear. I want to tell you a quick story. As if Bill showed up with this list to me as a sponsor, I assure you, he was going to be in for a bit of a surprise. Years ago, over 20 years ago, I was doing a fourth step with someone in that category, a wife and a mistress. And I was at his house. And this is a story about the spiritual world having something to say. So back at home, there was a female back at home who was well familiar with what I was doing. And so she's at home, and at home, I had to have gallons of water. The water I had wasn't good for drinking, so I had 6-gallon jugs and boxes stacked 5 high. Not a problem. So anyway, I'm at his house, and I'm got a 20-ounce cappuccino I'm sucking in while he's doing his list, and he gets to column 4, and he produces some sort of information. Next thing, the cappuccino's coming out my mouth and my nose, and I'm choking, carrying on, and wearing it. And in the meantime, the phone's ringing. And I pick up the phone, and on the other end of the phone is the female from my house saying, "What's going on down there? There's water jugs all over the kitchen." And I start laughing and laughing because basically the one word I wanted to come out with this whole time, and he's looking at me from across the room, was bullshit. He was really minimizing what part he was playing. And the spirit world was letting him know we all knew it was bullshit. So you take that for what it was worth, but it was quite a memorable moment from 20 years ago. In this process, you're going to encounter that sort of thing. The spirit world will help you if you are open to that. Let me say it a different way. I believe the hand of God shows up in these few paragraphs. The crosswinds are exceptional. And it's up to me to try to get you to see that. If you can't see it, 2 things will happen. One, you won't understand it, and you can't teach it. So let's review. We looked at Bill's story. We know he did step 8 and step 4. He wrote it in the same sentence. We went and looked at step 8, and it said we have our list when we took inventory, so we know to look in step 4 for that. We just read some directions, and in that I spoke of the attitude adjustment. And so we turned back to the list. It held the keys. This was our list, not the other person's. Tolerance, pity, patience. It says we avoid retaliation or argument. And what does that have to do with column 4, step 4? It really doesn't. Not yet. It does, but it doesn't. It will become apparent. So let me say it a different way. These paragraphs are a master key. A master key opens many locks. Another way to say it. Columns 1, 2, and 3 were one track on a train. These paragraphs now split that track into several directions. The first direction we're speaking about today is column 4. A second track is going to be column 5. We're going to take that up next time. Another track is going to be a video we'll do after. Another track is going to be a video we're going to do a little time later. Another track is going to be step 8. We're going to come back to this reading again and again. The crosswinds are exceptional. But we'll take it one piece at a time, and then you'll understand it. We're going to build on it. So we're going to come back to that example with Bill. But what I'd like to do is let's look at it from a sponsor perspective. So you're the sponsor. sponsor now, and you're going to sort of help your sponsee feather it out. So first, now we're going to look only at what really applies to column 4 today. Referring to our list again, put out of our minds the wrongs others had done. We resolutely looked for our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, or frightened? Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's, not the other person's. So that's what we're really focusing on today. And another point that I'd like to make, columns 1, 2, and 3 that we covered previously are done from top to bottom. I believe column 4 and 5 are done across. Columns 1, 2, and 3 are the resentment list. We're done with that. Column 4 and 5 is the beginning of step 8. So they're together, but at some point they will also separate. So we'll look at the reading again, and we'll do it from a sponsor perspective. And so Mr. Brown, let's use the example, told my wife of my mistress. And he believes it affects sex relations and self-esteem. And so in column 4, where was his mistake? And he put fear. So, and there's also other words that we put in to consider later. But for now, I want to come back to that and develop that a little bit. Now, in 98, I had created a 12-step guide. I wrote a book, and I developed this example specifically, and so I'm just going to read from that. It's easier. So column 1, I'm resentful at Mr. Brown. Column 2, told my wife of my mistress. Column 3, more than likely affects his self-esteem, his security, his ambitions, his personal relations, his acceptable sex relations, and his hidden sex relations, more than likely. His mistake, more than likely, he was probably selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened. Now we're going to get into column 5 the next time. Again, I believe 4 and 5 run together. But for today, accept that you're starting your step 8 list in step 4. And we're going to develop this over time. As we take it one piece at a time, it will make much more sense to you. We'll keep coming back to those little paragraphs, and we'll build on this, and we'll also put in motion. In 98, I didn't consider some information that we're considering this time. So we're going to develop that further in the next video, and we'll keep looking at that stuff. So for today, it's an attitude adjustment. You're done with your resentment list. Now you're looking at your mistakes, and we're going to take it a piece at a time. So if you have your list, and you certainly can start looking at it and considering it, but I encourage you to come back and see column 5 so you can develop those together. There's a natural component here. Well, thank you, and have a nice day.
If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Ring the bell to be notified when new content is added. Also, You can support the channel 12-Step Guide with Troyo by donating through PayPal to hsworldservice@yahoo.com. In Step 4, we are laying the groundwork and planting seeds for the 9th step promises. Those promises are: we are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Keep moving forward. It's worth the effort,